This week, the DEA dashed the hopes of marijuana legalization advocates when it chose to keep pot on its list of most dangerous drugs. So marijuana remains classified with highly addictive drugs like heroin and cocaine, even though more and more states and cities are legalizing or decriminalizing pot use.
What few Americans recognize is a significant downside to the pot legalization movement. It's addressed in an article in this month's Esquire magazine titled Horse of the Apocalypse. The author is Winslow, who has written about the drug trade for decades, and he is here now to tell us more. Good morning.
Good morning.
I have to tell you, this is such a well-written article. It's so easy to understand.
Well, thank you very much. Great editors and yeah.
Well, given your background also, it's easy to understand why you're so well-versed in all of this. Start off with the thesis. I mean, how do you link the legalization to the heroin epidemic?
First of all, can I address the DEA's issue yesterday? This is very good news for the Mexican drug cartels, because the Mexican drug cartels make their billions of dollars by selling Schedule I drugs. So by keeping it illegal, keeping it felonious, keeping it all that, you raise the price of marijuana, and you create billions of dollars for psychopathic killers. So it's a bad decision. To answer the question you asked me, though, the thesis is that when 2 states and then a third legalized marijuana, marijuana imports from the Mexican drug cartels dropped by almost 38%. And those are the DEA numbers, not mine. They lost millions of dollars. So they looked around to replace that income. Now what are we going to do? They found a ready-made marketplace with opioids. Big American pharmaceutical companies had created a whole population of addicts that were paying $30 basically a dose for these drugs. So the Sinaloa cartel, Chapo Guzman's outfit, and others said, gosh, if we increase production and increase potency, we can get into that market, undercut the American pharmaceutical companies, and sell this product at $10 a dose.
So instead of growing marijuana in fields, what they've done is they've built plants where they can produce this heroin laced with fentanyl.
Exactly. That's what happened, because the profits are immense. If you take a kilo of basic heroin, you can make about, let's say, $217,000 of profit on that kilo here in New York City. Fentanyl, you make $1.3 million. And you don't need these massive fields. You don't need all this infrastructure that you need with heroin. It can be made, as you said, in a lab. So it's a much easier product to ship. It's a much more profitable product.
These drugs have now taken Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yes.
They took Prince, among the big names that we've seen in recent years. You mentioned El Chapo, back in custody now after 2 successful escapes. You talk about the most recent escape and some of the myths surrounding that recent escape. His capture has changed the cartel structure in Mexico in dangerous ways, in some ways. How is that?
It has. There's almost an Iraq analogy available to us. When we took out Saddam Hussein, definitely an evil man, no question about it, as is Mr. Guzman. But it created chaos, it created opportunity. The same thing has happened in Mexico. When Guzman was there, the Sinaloa cartel, his outfit was the dominant drug trafficking organization in Mexico. There was what we called the Pax Sinaloa, the Sinaloa Peace, after 10 years of hideous violence. With Chapo away, with the Sinaloa cartel now fracturing, other groups, smaller groups, younger and more violent groups are now rising again and creating another round of violence.
The portrait you paint of El Chapo, though, is very interesting, because the article, I think, talks a lot about how he was revered in the sense of his background. He's selling cocaine by the time he's 15. He's building things within the city. What was it about his violent nature that allowed this sort of a culture to exist?
Listen, any of these organized crime figures, but particularly in Mexico, are simultaneously criminals and benefactors to the communities. Not unusual in organized crime, really, anywhere. So Guzman in Sinaloa and Durango, his home base, would build churches, clinics, playgrounds, give away refrigerators, washing machines, all kinds of things, providing services that the government failed to. In that sense, he's revered. But let's look at the dark side of that. He has the fist inside that velvet glove. If you didn't do what he wanted, if you were going to betray him, he would kill you, he would kill your entire family. So there's a combination of fear and reverence that goes with that image.
It's also frightening to think fentanyl could be the new heroin. We've already lived through all of that.
And he talks about it. It's a fascinating article in Esquire and worth checking out.
Thank you very much.
Don Winslow, thank you.
My pleasure.